Jonathan Lemire, I want you to tell me what is really going on when Donald Trump starts live hate tweeting during an Obama rally. I mean, he is more agitated by his predecessor than he is by his current opponent. And with 7 days to go, I can't imagine there's anyone in Donald Trump's political life who relishes a Twitter war with Fox for airing the Obama speech, or against Obama, or against Borat, or against Bill de Blasio or Nancy Pelosi. Is there any effort in a concerted manner to focus Donald Trump to be any shell of the candidate he was 4 years ago?
Well, first of all, it's always been the case that President Obama has particularly lived inside President Trump's head. He's always been obsessed with him. Some of his policy agenda seems to set simply to undo things that Obama did, even more than advocate anything that the president or his team believes in, first and foremost. But this is his inability to stay on message is a real concern, and it is very different from 4 years ago. And I know that maybe sounds surprising to some, but for that last 10 days to 2 weeks of the 2016 stretch, now let's be clear, Donald Trump, compared to any other candidate, would have still seemed a little bit all over the place. But for him, he was pretty on message and pretty disciplined. He largely put Twitter away. He toned it down in those last week to 10 days. And his rallies, and I was at more than I can count, day after day, multiple times a day, hammered home the same themes with real consistency. It was immigration. It was trade. It was making allegations of corruption against Hillary Clinton. It was this America First foreign policy idea. And it was over and over and over, the sort of master brander, right? The real estate developer and reality TV star with the catchphrases. And they drilled home. They sunk in. And that's simply not the case this time around. For it's not just that he seems more obsessed with Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton than Joe Biden. He can't deliver the messages his aides want him to, or he does in such a scattershot fashion they don't stick. He is delivering their closing argument. Their closing argument is meant to be the idea of selling, you want to vote for me and the Trump economic recovery versus what would be a Biden socialist policy and perhaps a depression. He does say those lines every day, but then he moves on to something else.
When did he last? I mean, and here, let me ask you, let me put you on the spot, Jonathan Lemire. I have heard a version of what President Obama said about COVID from Trump allies. When President Obama said, Donald Trump's mad at COVID because it's getting more press coverage than he is. I have heard a version of that from an outside advisor to Donald Trump, that Donald Trump is the sun king and anything that blocks him from all the sunlight and all the attention enrages him, whether it's another politician, whether it's a storm, whether it's a pandemic. That is the truest thing that has been said about him in this campaign cycle, and they have no comeback.
So 2 points on that. First, in terms of delivering that closing message, I was there at his rally on Sunday in New Hampshire. He did say that line. It was about 30 seconds worth, and then he moved on. In that same rally, he spent 15 minutes talking about renegotiating the contract for the new Air Force Ones, which left most in the crowd sort of puzzled and shaking their heads, not quite sure that's going to move the needle on any polls. And then secondly, there's no question that he has long prized above anything else his ability to drive the media, to sort of control the narrative. He has told aides, as we've reported, that sometimes he'll just tweet something and he'll wait to see how long it takes before one of the cable networks changes their chyron. He thinks that's real power. COVID's the one subject he can't change, that he's been able to deflect and set up the fog machine and to bounce off from scandal to headline, where he often seems like he can stay one step ahead of the chaos he creates. But with COVID, he can't. It is the one thing that has dragged him down. It has shadowed him this entire year, and it is why his advisors believe he is losing. The American people simply have judged that he has handled this pandemic poorly, and he can't change the subject with only a week to go.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.